Okay, today we're in part one of our manifestation process, and we're looking at visualization. There's a lot written about visualization and about conditions, manifestation, all of the things we'll be talking about through this series. It's important to realize that when we are looking at the conditions in our life, that we're actually looking into the past. And this is not an easy thing to grasp, but you know that if you look up in the sky at night and you see the stars, you're not seeing them as they are. You're seeing them as they were, in some cases, millions of years ago or thousands of light years ago, I guess, in some cases. It takes light a while to get to us. If you see somebody hammering a couple of blocks away, you'll notice you can see the hammer strike their nail or strike the board, whatever they're hitting, and it'll be a little while before you hear the sound of it. And we a lot of times approach our conditions as if they're present, as if they're not an effect, as if they're an actual cause. And that would be a little like dealing with the sound of the hammering by covering our ears. You might block the sound, but you don't block the source. And so visualization is a way to deal with the source. It's a way to deal with that originating factor in us. It has very little to do with actual conditions. You know, there was a man that was blind from birth brought to Jesus, and the disciples asked, who sinned, this man or his parents? So they're saying, why is this condition like it is? What was the cause of it? You know, they're saying the cause being in the past. And Jesus said it doesn't really matter what caused it. This is an opportunity to show the works of God. In other words, this is an opportunity to start a new cause. And that's what we have to keep in mind. There are conditions that we don't like in our life. So instead of kind of covering our ears, dealing with the condition as it appears, our job is to start a new cause. And that's, again, one of the most difficult things because we're so used to reacting to the condition. So we take our mind off the condition as much as we possibly can, and we start a whole new program of lifting up our eyes and seeing the fields that are already for harvest. And that's the challenge that we're faced with. And as I said, there's a lot written about visualization. There's a lot written about manifestation. It comes, I don't know when people started dwelling on this, but I'm dealing with the work of Thomas Troward, as I introduced last week. He was a judge, a retired judge, back in the 1800s that became one of the premier spokesmen for New Thought. And he represents a branch of New Thought that is called mental science. And the reason it's called mental science is because you don't need Jesus, you don't need religion, you don't need anything having to do with any of your religious beliefs or backgrounds to work with the principles, because it deals with the science of mind. It's how do we use our thought, how do we use our visualization or imagination to change our conditions. You don't have to have any religious influence in this at all. So that's religious science. Basically, he didn't found religious science, but Ernest Holmes started that whole movement teaching one of Troward's books, the Edinburgh Lectures. A businessman had asked him to do that to help with his business, help others in their business. So it's more about how to use your mind. And there is definitely a place for that. Unity brought Jesus into the whole picture in a lot stronger way. and that we called him our way shower, that one who demonstrated what we're talking about here, and that Ernest Holmes actually focused a lot on Jesus also, but both movements have gotten far away from the whole Jesus idea. More moved into secularism, more of the mental kind of thing, and are dealing a lot with social issues and all that. It's a move away from the spiritual awakening, in my opinion, and I think it's a move in the wrong direction. But movements have to move, and they go someplace, and if they don't have the kind of leadership that grasps the principles that they're founded upon, then we'll lose the direction that the movement goes. But the good news is somebody will pop up someplace else another time and kind of reinvent the wheel. That's what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore did way back when, and all the people that came out of that era. It was a very powerful time in our history in terms of challenging the norm, challenging the traditional religious standards that were set up, taking a new look at who this man Jesus was and what it means to us, how we can use the principles that he taught and demonstrated in our own lives to lift up our whole experience. So Troward was pretty much strictly a mental scientist, we might say, although he also referred a lot to Jesus. But his interest is in how does our world show up? What makes it look like it does? What are we doing mentally and emotionally to cause that to happen? And there is no doubt, no question, that we are influencing this creative process. And we know this because every one of our lives in this room are unique. We live on the same planet, right? Wrong. We all live on a different planet. We have different perceptions. We're demonstrating on this earth according to our consciousness, according to our belief system, according to our self-perception. So we are influencing the manifestation process. My life shows up as it does, not by accident, but by something that is unique to me, something I'm doing, some relationship I have with this process. And so mental science and unity, religious science and whatever kind of science you're talking about here, the aim of that was to get a hold of this process, how we are influencing the manifestation process, what we can do to influence it on our behalf. And I think this is, Jesus recognized that this was going on with the, consider the lilies of the field. They don't spin their clothing, they don't store into barns. Birds of the air don't store into barns, and yet your Heavenly Father takes care of them. He was acknowledging there is a way they are translating the invisible into the visible. And we don't really think of that. And actually, I don't think anything in nature thinks of this. It is inborn in them. We could call it instinct, if you like. Somebody had a picture of a mother otter teaching her baby otter to swim, and I never had seen anything like this, but she was grabbing this thing by the neck and just jumping in the water and dragging it all around. You can imagine this little guy just terrorized by what his mother. I thought it just came natural to him. But many years ago when Beth and I lived in Missouri, we had about an acre pond, and we raised a dozen ducks. Hatched them out, or we didn't hatch them out, we bought them very little, but they were in a box in our bathroom, for a long time. The day came when we put them on the pond, and you would think, a duck takes to water. Well, these ducks were terrified by that pond. They had no idea that they were supposed to be there. And so we'd throw them out there. First of all, just set them out there, and they didn't want nothing to do with that. And so I got where I started throwing them out there. I threw them out as far as I could, and they would walk on water back, to get back to shore. They did not want to do that. But eventually they caught on, and You know, they were the proverbial duck in water. But so not all that stuff comes natural, and it's interesting how a parent otter, for example, would take this little guy and just thrash him through the water, like, you know, are you breathing? I don't know. Let's go. And are you holding your breath? I don't know. We'll find out. If you come up choking, you'll learn not to do that, you know. So nature isn't as instinctive, I guess, as we might think sometimes. But the mother knows what to do, knows what the baby can take, and knows, you know, how to direct them and all. But it was a pretty hilarious video. But there is this natural. You take a plant, and how does it know to do these things? How does a seed know when it falls into the ground to let go, to die, as Jesus says, to die to its seed self and open up to a process that maybe it is terrifying to the seed? I don't know. I don't know what seeds think about. I kind of do, because I've been a seed dropped in the ground and covered up, and it felt like there was no light or hope anywhere. But something happens in that process. There's a natural thing. There's a process of turning from the invisible to the visible, the manifestation process. And so you take a seed, and it has no brain as far as we know, but there's a pattern that is built into it. So we have to assume, if that's true of a lowly seed, it must be true of us. If it's true of a sparrow, they know how to adapt to their environment in a way that is, well, where they're very successful, and the sparrow was very successful. Too successful, they say. It's an invasive species, and it's so common. You watch a video that's filmed in India or somewhere like that, and there's sparrows over there, just look exactly like ours, so they're all over the place. But there's something in animals, plants, and in us that knows how to translate the invisible into the visible. So that's what our spiritual teaching really is about. I am on this earth, I am in this body, but there's something more to me. How do I address my needs? How do I address the things I need while I'm here? This is not me. This is my vehicle. How do I keep the vehicle going? How do I flourish on this planet? I believe all of us flourish as souls. I think we've covered that up pretty much. Getting lost in our bodies, it's lost in the manifestation process. So what we're trying to do is sort this out and say, I'm not here to serve the body only. And it sure feels like that's the case, doesn't it? It just feels like so much of our life is built around service to the body. Our whole medical profession, our whole food industry, our whole, all the exercise things, everything, our housing, our clothing industries. All of these things are designed to serve the body. And so it's very easy to understand how we could disconnect from whatever it is that helps the lilies of the field and the sparrows of the air be successful. And so that's what we want to get back to. Is there a way that we can influence or work with this manifestation process? So that's what things like this are about. And I don't like to take the approach that so many do, that this is some kind of magic. This is not a genie's lamp that we're rubbing and putting out our 3 wishes. And to do that separates us from the larger picture. It takes the mind off the soul, and it focuses only on the manifestation. What can I get from this? Not who am I, but what can I get from this? The point that we hope to arrive at is, the more we understand who we are as spiritual beings, the more natural the manifestation process comes to us. It should not be the focus of our attention. But it might need to be the focus of our attention for a period. So we learn how to trust it, how to let go. So this is a system of, this is one approach to how we can become more conscious of this whole process. And what's really interesting about this is nothing that we talk about here is something that we have to learn. We're doing all of it already. We already know how to do every step, all the 5 steps that we're looking at and more. The question is, are we conscious of how we're doing it? And that, to me, is the point of a process like this. It's a point of a system, is to call to our attention how we're using the manifestation process. In a blog I wrote this week, I talked about the faculty of faith and how it's an interesting faculty because it can be focused on worst case scenarios, or it can be focused on best case scenarios. The faculty itself is indifferent to where we turn it. So is our faith in the greater good, or is our faith in what is apparently wrong with everything in my life? And it's very easy to get sucked into that. We don't need more faith. We need to redirect, be conscious of how we're using our faith. And that's, I think that's helpful because I don't have to add some new trick or new talent to myself. I'm already doing all of it. Am I conscious of it, how I'm doing it? That's what matters. So the first step that Troward picks out, and this, as I said, it's buried in the Edinburgh Lectures, that book. It's not, you don't find these step 1, step 2, step 3. I went through and drew it out of one of the chapters. I can't remember at this moment which chapter that was. But you won't find these as steps as I have them here. But you'll find the principles throughout. So it says, form a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing, you impress your desire upon the creative life force. And that's my term. Call it whatever you want. Call it God. Call it the universe. Call it whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm comfortable with the creative life force. This process of manifestation that's occurring through us at all times. This understanding takes this first step out of the region of fantasy. So what he's saying is exactly the same thing as you're going to plant something. You decide if it's going to be a bean, if it's going to be a tomato, if it's going to be a corn crop, whatever it's going to be. You select the seed. The moment you select the seed, you form a vision. You see that thing already mature. It's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction. You can see yourself sitting at the table eating whatever it is you're going to plant. So it's the same idea here. You form a picture, a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing, you impress upon your desire upon the creative life force. When you pick up a bean, you're making a decision. You haven't planted it yet, but you're making a very specific decision. You're going to agree with the creative life force to grow a bean. It's very specific. But if you say, for example, I would love to be prosperous, I'd like to make more money. And then you say, but I'm afraid I don't know how, or I'm afraid this or that's going to happen. You're picking up 3 or 4 seeds. One of them's a weed, or 3 or 4 of them are weeds. One of them is the thing you want. So the challenge with this is it's invisible, and it flitters away so fast, or flitters into your head so fast you don't even know it. And it seems so normal, and it is normal, to shift from what you want to what you don't want, but it's the same process. You're just picking up seeds and you're sowing seeds. We're doing that. I'm including myself in that as well. And that's what we're trying to get a handle on. So in order to form a clear picture of your desire, you may do something like create a vision board. Go through magazines, cut out pictures of things that, that represent how you want to feel or how you want to be or express. Create affirmations around that. I have found my favorite way of doing that is using this program, PowerPoint. And I know probably most of you don't know how to use that, or don't use it, or don't even have it. There's a couple of free ones out there that I would recommend if you're interested in doing something like this. But the reason I like this is because you've seen the beautiful photographs, how easy it is to put them up and then to put words on top of that. And the vision board I've created for myself is a series of beautiful photos with affirmations. It's a way to get me in the mindset, the feeling of what it is I want to express and experience. It's very helpful, but it's not needed. You don't have to do anything. It's just a way to form a clear picture. You form a clear picture just in your imagination, you know how easy it is for that to flitter away. But if you actually have a picture, if you have something to look at, that to me helps. But you don't want to make that the magic wand either. That's the danger of doing these kinds of things, of any technique. So form a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing, you impress your desire upon the creative life force. This understanding takes the first step out of the region of fantasy. That is, it becomes something. It becomes something you can look at. Something, even if you just write down words, and I think that's a very good way to do things as well, to journal. But to stay in the vein of where you want to go, not in what you don't want. So we all carry a picture of the life we believe we deserve, and we're living out that life on a daily basis. This is the problem. We carry a vision, and that vision is all over the place. And it may or may not be to our liking. So often we're focused on what's wrong with our life, and that's so easy to do, because there's usually some kind of pain involved with it, and we turn to what hurts us. We turn to what's painful. We focus on that. You ever had a little splinter you couldn't even see, but you could feel it? And that becomes the whole focus of your attention until you get the splinter out. It's like it's so minute, but if it's there, it's got your attention. So it's easy to let our imagination run wild. We carry a picture of the life that we believe we deserve, and you got to think about that. Not necessarily the life that we really want, but the life we believe we deserve. So who's the one believing this? You see, we're digging deeper than just pictures on a board. The life we deserve. Who is this one who is getting this life? Who is this I that believes it deserves this life? We're living out of that life on a daily basis. The problem with this picture is that it may not be the life that we really want. And that's probably the case. So we need some intervention. And intervention is to sit down consciously and do a thing that's different from what we've been doing, just letting our minds run wild. So we're engaging in a 5-step process that will help bring our awareness to what we want rather than what we don't want. We need to put forth the effort to refine our desire so clearly that we're aware when we drift away from it. Very important. A good way to do this is to write it down or to put it in pictures, and probably both. But this is a process. You know, when you define the type of life you want, don't do it in 15 minutes. Do it over a week, do it over 2 weeks, do it over a month. As I open my own vision board in PowerPoint, I change it again. Almost every time I open it, I change it. I change it for the better. And it's a good exercise. It's a good exercise to go through it, but you don't want to just keep staring at something and thinking some magic is going to happen. Get involved in your vision. And don't think that this thing is something separate from your life. Get into that vision. Get into the process of what you're doing with this 5-step process. So we need to put forth the effort to refine our desires so clearly that we're aware when we drift away from it. How often are you aware when you drift away from what you said 15 minutes ago that you wanted? It's, again, so easy. Somebody comes up, says something, you're off on a conversation that has nothing to do with what you want. Emily Cady said, don't spend a lot of time running out with people like this or running out with conversations like this, because you don't have any idea what you lose in doing that. We just get off target. And I'm not saying, that we shut off all communication with everybody, because if you shut off every negative person in your life, that would be most people who have those moments, that want to tell you what's wrong with their life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to learn when you're buying into that, when you're losing track of your own self. Start with a general overview of the thing you would like to see manifest, and then rework it until you feel you have a clear statement of the good you desire. And as I said, give yourself time to do this. Writing is, I think, probably the best way, but the only thing with adding pictures, like, you write out a vision of your life and you put it on a beautiful sunset or something. They're just something that helps with the emotion. The visualization is the emotional side, and you definitely want to engage both the intellectual side and the intuitive side, the thought and the emotion. Vision is thought and emotion. It's both. You can hold a picture of something and yet feel this drag in yourself, in your emotional side, and that's what we want to bring out into the open. So how would I feel if this desire were manifested now? That's how you get there. That's how you get that juice flowing, is you forget the problem, and how would you feel if this desire, this vision had come forth now? And begin to write these feelings down, and just jot them down, not trying to make them formal, but just jot things down that come to you. How would I feel? And then work that into statements later on, longer statements. Because a lot of what we're doing is we're seeing, but we're releasing. We're seeing something that we would like to have expressed in our life, but that so often involves a releasing, a letting go. And that's something you have to sort through that yourself. But that's the weeds that we have to go through. It's a letting go of, why am I countering this vision? What in me is countering this vision? What in me does not believe I deserve this greater good? What in me believes that I am locked in this corner and I can't get out? So I look at me, the me here. Who is this me that is saying I'm in an impossible situation? And I let go of that energy. How would I feel if that me were gone? How would I feel if I were not being told what to think or feel by this me, this part of me? So we spend time considering our feelings, and we rewrite our statements in ways that include them. Statements, whatever you come up with. It can be pages, but don't make it too long, because you get lost in it. You won't go back and reread it and work with it. And we're not talking about journaling. We're talking about something else. We're talking about bringing our life into a concise statement, bringing where we want to go into a concise statement, how we want to feel, who we want to be. A vision consists of an image and a feeling. Very important. See yourself free and happy. See yourself free and happy that your desired good has come about. Never see yourself struggling to make it happen. And that also is a challenge. I don't like where I am. I know where I would like to be, so what do I have to do to get there? I roll up my sleeves and go to work. Maybe I do that. Maybe I do need to do that. But this is a spiritual process. And remember, the life that you have right now probably didn't take a whole lot of effort to make happen. Did you struggle really hard to put yourself in that hole? Or did it just come natural? We want this to be natural. We don't want to work at something, but by work, let's make it, I want to be conscious. That's my work, is to be conscious of how I'm using my faculties. So a vision consists of an image and a feeling, or feelings. See yourself free and happy that your desired good has come about. Whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you received it. Same thing. Never see yourself struggling to make it happen. Read your statement with conviction at least twice a day, once in the morning, once at bedtime, and then throughout your day when possible. Do not struggle to make it true. Know that it is true. And again, this is not a science in terms of how many times should I look at this thing a day to make it happen. Work with it till this, what you're looking at, is you. It becomes you. It's a very natural part of your consciousness. Memorizing it may be good. Memorizing what you write down may be good. But sometimes memorization is not so good. All of you have memorized the Lord's Prayer, right? But when I go through it verse by verse, don't you find that there's a lot more to it than you thought? It's always the case. So memorization has its place if you connect it with your being. And there's not a thing wrong with it. That's why we have imagination and memory. Okay, that's basically step one. So we're going to move into step 2 next week. Thanks for coming out. Stay cool. Don't let the smoke get you down.